There is one other announcement that I've been asked to remind the ladies. Does anyone know what's happening next Sunday afternoon? If you're a bloke, no, you don't. You're not invited. So next Sunday afternoon at 2 o'clock, there's a ladies' high tea. Now, I'm told it's a high tea, so I don't know what's the matter, what the difference is between a low tea, a middle tea, but it's a high tea. So, ladies, it's a treat for you, and please just remember, it's next Sunday at 2 o'clock. Also, we have a visitor, Mark Cox is with us. Mark has been with us for over the years many times. He's from WA, he's at Nunalinga, and he's doing as I believe, a theology course, and Joe's one of his lecturers, so he's under the gun, even on his weekends off. So we do welcome you. And has anyone looked at the church web page lately? No, you slackers. You would have noticed something different. It's all changed. It's brand new. Not all the links work yet, but we do have the website has been completely and professionally done, updated. So I would appreciate any feedback that you have about how we can improve it, but it's been done. Now, I don't want you to go on the web now and have a look at some other time. Please do it, but it's been updated. And it's important that we do understand and know how our enemy works, particularly regarding how he attacks our minds. And one of the most successful strategies that he employs today is that of bitterness and unforgiveness. Bitterness and unforgiveness. And he wants us to embrace all the offenses. He wants us to embrace all the hurts and focus on those hurts so that he can trap us in this area of bitterness and unforgiveness. Now you say, well, that doesn't bother me, I'm a Christian. Well, yeah. You see, as a believer in Christ, we're told, I know I am to forgive as Christ has forgiven me. And it's important that we understand and know that forgiveness is critical because it keeps our hearts soft and permeable and responsive towards God and towards other people. What are the two commandments that the Lord Jesus gave us? Love God with what? All your heart, soul, and mind, and then do what? Love your neighbor as yourself. So if I've got bitterness in my heart towards God, how is that going to affect my relationship with him and with other people? And vice versa. If I've got a gripe or a grudge against somebody else, is that going to affect my fellowship with God? No. Yes. It is. Why? Because God doesn't want us to hold grudges. He doesn't want us to be bitter and unforgiven. And often, he'll use the platforms of social media. I'm amazed. I'm glad that when I grew up, there was no such thing as Facebook at all. But today, people look up Facebook to see what other people are saying about them. And they take it to heart when somebody says things about them. And there's a bitterness that takes place. And God wants us to be able to forgive people. Now you might be thinking, well, like this old bloke. Now it's not just to old blokes. Bitterness. What bitterness? I'm not bitter. What is bitterness? A grudge, Now, let me just say, every person in this room understands and had personal experience with bitterness. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. All right, Karen, after the service. All right? But bitterness, what is it? It's the feeling of deep hostility and cynicism towards the actions and motives of other people. Wow. It's the internal consequence of anger and unforgiveness toward the painful experiences of our past. When we feel emotionally bitter, we are easily angered and agitated. We grow sour over time due to our unwillingness to release the I must get even feeling that internal pain longs for. And it's interesting, as I looked it up, the Greek word for bitterness is pikria. And that is an interesting concept because that word means sticky. And you think to yourself, what's that got to do with bitterness? Think about it. All the hurts, all the offenses, all the trauma, it sticks to our lives. And that's where that word sticky comes from. The trauma, someone says something. What happens? It sticks in my mind. Someone hurts me. It sticks. It's part of me now. It's part of who I am. It sticks with me until I get to do something with it. It's like stepping on bubble gum. You know, when people spit it out in the street and you just happen to walk in and you got your shoe and you try to lift it up and there's this stretchy stuff. It's all hard to get off because it sticks. It wants to hold. And the same happens with bitterness. It sticks to us. And our enemy uses negative thoughts and emotions towards anyone who fails to live up to our expectations, to anyone who stands or doesn't stand up for us or embarrasses us in public or private, to anyone that we personally hold responsible. They'll become the object of our attention. And God can be the subject of our attention. It can be other people who become the object of our attention. It can even become ourselves. Bitterness develops because of a failure to work properly to address past hurts and wounds. Often we want to suppress, hide it, just put it away somewhere, not think about it, don't go there, don't mention it. But you know what happens? It's like a volcano, it bubbles away, just bubbling below the surface until someday or sometime someone comes along and says something, and guess what? That volcano goes boom. Over what? Over nothing. It's because it's been bubbling away and it has to find itself out. But let me ask you, how would you describe, a bitter person? I thought you would you'd recognise. Now, I'm not one that would suck a lemon, but I know that lemons are sour. Some people do. But how do we describe a bitter person? They're not lemons. Negative? Yeah. Now, you see, bitterness affects our mood and our interactions with other people. People become irritated regularly, triggered by small things that really shouldn't bother them. Some people take inventory of their relationships and they believe the lie that other people don't understand me or appreciate me for what I do. It's unresolved anger. It's victimization. It's a desire for revenge. It's persistent resentment. It's a distorted perception of reality. It's emotional isolation and alienation. Wow. Now, as I sit here this morning, would I describe myself as a bitter person? Would I describe myself as a bitter person? And yet I wonder, you see, bitterness, is it ever legitimate? Have I got the right to be angry and bitter at somebody? Or circumstances?
You got the right to be angry.
You see, I can be angry at things, but bitterness is the wrong response. And most of all, it's never acceptable to God. But ask yourself this morning, is there anybody that I am bitter towards? Now, if a name flashes in your mind, there may be a problem. Is there anger deep down inside that you've never dealt with? Is the poison of it seeping into every facet of my life? And the question I ask myself is, how can I know? Most people think that if they have bitterness, they would know. However, that's not necessarily the truth. Bitterness comes slowly. It's invisible. You may not even be aware of it happening. I have to go back, I think. Oops. The character trait bitter is an emotional state characterized by strong negative feelings such as anger, resentment, or disappointment. A bitter character may hold grudges, be difficult to please, have a negative outlook on life. They may struggle to move past hurts, may be quick to blame others for their problems. Bitterness can be the result of personal struggles or negative experiences, but it can also be a choice to hold on to negative feelings rather than finding ways to move forward and find joy. Now, in that description, I think we find each one of ourselves. You see, there's a description of a bitter person, the damage of bitterness. Does it do any damage, a bitter person? You see, bitterness has a habit of damaging every person's life. It has severe consequences to the giver and also to the receiver. It destroys churches, it destroys families, it ruins marriages, it severs relationships, it ravages spiritual, mental, and emotional health as well as physical health. And Paul indicated that a failure to forgive makes us vulnerable to Satan's schemes. In 2 Corinthians 2:10 it says, "But whom you forgive anything, I also. For indeed what I have forgiven, if I have forgiven anything, I did it for your sakes in the presence of Christ, in order that no advantage be taken of us by Satan, for we are not to be ignorant of his schemes." As someone has said, an unforgiving spirit is like a hot coal. The longer and tighter it's held, the deeper it burns. Bitterness is dangerous because it doesn't just affect one area of life, it spreads. And this little diagram hopefully will help. Do you have a root rot? Take it or leave it. The root of unforgiveness and bitterness is at the foundation, but it goes through into the branches. It has a short fuse. It keeps score. It's self-pity, it's addiction, depression, jealousy, accuses, blames others, causes strife, complaining, self-low esteem, controlling, judgmental, anger, hostility. I wonder, can we see ourselves in that picture? You might be thinking, not me, Pastor. I'm fine. No problem there, mate. I'm okay. No worries. A bitter root is powerful because bitterness works like a root underground. It stays hidden at first, but over time it grows and then it begins to impact everything. It doesn't just stay in the heart. It spills into our words, our actions, and our attitudes. A bitter person often becomes resentful, angry, ungrateful, and unable to experience joy. They continually replay hurts. They refuse to let go of offenses. But bitterness doesn't just affect the one holding it. It spreads to others, damaging friendships, damaging families, damaging communities. And God warns us about bitterness because He wants to live in freedom. He doesn't want us trapped in bitterness and its bondage. Let your past make you better, not bitter. And that's a decision that we make. What can we do with a bitter spirit? And the Bible gives us the answer. It says love and forgiveness. Jesus entrusted His life to God. He sacrificed His life for offenders. He not only dismissed our debt, but lavished undeserved blessing upon us despite that offense. And He calls us, as His people, to do exactly the same thing. The Scriptures prescribe a new way that we're to relate to one another. Love for one another and even our enemies is the ultimate evidence of a true follower of Christ. And we're told in Colossians, but now you also put them all aside, anger, wrath, malice, slander, abusive speech from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, since you laid aside the old self with its evil practices, and have put on the new self, who is being renewed to a true knowledge according to the image of the one who created him. And it goes on in Colossians. So as those who have been chosen of God, holy and beloved, put on a heart of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, bearing with one another, forgiving each other. Whoever has a complaint against anyone, just as the Lord forgave you, so also should you. Beyond all these things, put on love, which is the preferred bond of unity. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which indeed you were called in one body, and be thankful. Let the word of Christ dwell richly within you, with all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with thankfulness in your hearts to God. Whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through God the Father. That's a relationship that grows out of trust for God. Now, the diagnosis, do we have it or not? And I've put up this. Doesn't look very encouraging. But you see down the bottom? This is what you don't see. The root system. You don't see it. There's a tree just out here that's falling over. It has deep roots. But you wouldn't see those roots until they're uprooted. But they hold that tree together. And it affects the growth that happens in that tree. And all those leaves that we have there talk about the bitterness that stems from underneath, the causes, the assignments, the injustices, the generational patterns. In other words, my bitterness I can pass on to my children. If I'm critical, analytical, I can pass that on to my children. And guess what they'll do? They'll pass it on to their children and their children's children. It's invisible, but it's there. And it stems, as we can see, in rebellion, that branch that's going out. And from the leaves, drug and alcohol, disobedience, critical speech, confused state, hatred of authority, sensual sin, independence. That's just one branch of bitterness. And then we go up the tree, we see self-condemnation, comparison to others, withdrawing, secrecy, avoidance, argumentative, self-sufficient, independent, inflexible, laziness, procrastination, apathy, irresponsible, self-focused, anxiety, worried state, perfectionism, restlessness, skeptical, control, isolation, self-pity, hateful acts, withholding, skeptical, distrust, defensive, depression, competitive, skeptical, self-mutilation, rage. Didn't realize that bitterness had so many branches and leaves. But they do. They do. Am I suffering from bitterness and unforgiveness? And we need to honestly examine our lives for bitter roots. And that takes some work to detect. Bitterness can mask itself as something else. And we must be very careful to identify its presence. It can often masquerade itself as righteous anger, standing up for what is right, justifiable, tough love, self-preservation, our spiritual gifting. They can all mask themselves to hide the bitter spirit that's within us. And I put this up a couple of weeks ago, but it's a battle for the mind. This is Satan's attacks here: discouragement, hatred, all these things he uses to great effect. He attacks our identity, he attacks our family, he attacks marriage, children, etc. And he's very good at it. Yet when we look at the life of Jesus, there was no negative reactions to life, even though things got pretty tough. He was known for his gentle spirit, not an angry spirit. Now, if we look for the bitter and poisonous plants on the surface, we observe outward expressions of negative thoughts and emotions. Be aware of a constant struggle with anger. Now, do we get angry very quickly? In other words, do you have a short fuse? Do you have a long fuse?
I was never angry.
I'm not going to light your fuse. All right? There are people who have short fuses. They blow up over everything. And I mean, they blow up. And if you're in the vicinity, you know that person's not happy. Not happy at all. But it can be negative thoughts and emotions. It can be negative attitudes. It can be done in hurtful words that we speak to one another. They just slip out of our mouth. It just happens in anger. Are we continually saying hurtful things and then going back and apologizing? Often we might get the reputation of being, hey, don't go near that person, he's a hothead. Or an angry person, short fuse, meaning a negative person. How do people perceive us? Are we known for our encouragement or our criticism? Do people seek us out or avoid us? And the scriptures have much to say about how we're to deal with negative thoughts, about emotions, about strife and jealousy. Jesus made it clear that unaddressed bitter roots in the soul eventually show themselves on the surface. We can only keep it hidden for so long, and then it's got to come out. And the conversation of our mouth will ultimately reveal the condition and the contents of our soul. The things that proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and those defile the man. For out of the heart comes evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, slanders. These are the things which defile the man, according to Matthew 15, 18 to 20. Now, too often as Christians, we know the theory. We really know the theory. We can quote chapter, line, and verse. But when it comes to the actual applications of forgiving one another as Christ has forgiven us, we fall short. Now, what I'm going to say, it's not from anyone here, it's from personal experience. I've been married a long time, and I've learned a lot of things over the years, as many do. But there are some that don't learn, and there are some that are living lives that are indifferent and bitter. And so I've taken this illustration, because it's personal, about marriage. Now, maybe I won't have a job after I've said these things, but maybe I will. But they need to be said. Now, God instituted marriage. And in that marriage relationship, what is the structure that he used? What's the structure? The biblical structure. God. Next. It's not hard. I know if you're politically correct, you'll choke on it. It's called man, then woman, and then children. That wasn't hard, was it? But that's the biblical order of the family. And you'll notice an umbrella. When we get the order right, we're under God's protection. And that means the husband, the wife, and the children are all under their protection. You see, the husband is to protect the family, lead the family, and provide for the family. That's his role. The wife is to comfort, teach, and nurture. Children love parents and obey parents. It's not hard. It really isn't. But there's a problem. There's always a problem. But you see, that's the biblical model. Today we're told, no, we're all equal. What does that mean? We're all equal. You see, Satan uses the mind to deceive us. And that mind is to challenge the roles, responsibilities, and functions of men and women in marriage. And he's been successful. We call it marriage equality. Well, what is it? Well, when we look at it, we've got the secular view that views the husband and wife relationship is simply a legally binding contract. That's all it is. But you'll notice husband and wife are equal. They're the same. They're no difference. Yet in the biblical one, you see, we do have a situation where God is above, then there's the wife and the husband. And it's a covenant. And when we come before God and we ask Him to be witness to our marriage, He keeps us to that covenant. It's a covenant relationship. Now, what we find is often that marriage can be a battleground, and there can be bitter roots that form below the surface. And often, even with Christian marriages, this is what often happens. Ever happened to you?
No, I'm not married. I'm single. But I obey God's rules.
Well, we'll get to you shortly. We'll get to you shortly. You see, most marriages, we find that, they start off, we love one another, we're going to live happily ever after. And we make our pledges. You're all for me and I'm all for you. I got your back, you got my back. And we're going to sail off into the sunset and we're going to live happily ever after. Well, after you're married a couple of years, what do you find? I know you're not going to answer this. But the reality is you find that the daily grind of everyday living catches up. And it becomes difficult. And you wake up and you find, oh, she's not like I thought she was. She's not a princess. And she thinks, well, he's not my prince anymore. He doesn't do the dishes. He doesn't clean up after himself. He doesn't do this. And she doesn't do that. And she can't cook. And she doesn't do this. What happened? Shh. You get shot for that. What happened? Did we just wake up? Or what? The reality is we find out, well, the person I thought I knew, I didn't really know, but I'm getting to know. And sometimes the resentment can build up. It really can. And this is one of them, if you like. Here you've got God is at the center of a Christian marriage. We say He is. There you've got a husband, there you've got a wife, and over a period of time there is a wall that's built up, if we're not careful, between husband and wife. And it starts with the idea of trying to control each other. If he doesn't pick up his gear, as a wife, what am I going to do? Don't tell me, wives, you've never thought of this. It's never crossed your mind. As you see him drop his gear everywhere, do you just go around and pick it up and say, oh, that'll be fine, dear, that'll be fine. I don't mind doing this. I really don't. Or what do you do? Do you blow up in anger and say, how many times am I going to tell you to pick up your clothes?
I get told that often.
Now, I've used clothes, but it could be anything. It could be the dishes. And get this, it could be the toilet seat up or down. It can be even toilet paper round this way instead of that way. You laugh. It's no laughing matter. Marriages have been split over silly, dumb things. But it's irritation. It is bitterness that develops between husband and wife. And my observation and my personal experience, it comes down to often control. I will make him do it. I will make her do it. And what happens when you bash your head against a brick wall? Does it work? When he refuses to comply, how then do you react? Do you become more frustrated and more angry? Often you do, because he's not listening. And you see, in this relationship here with the barriers, and this is where it gets the personal application, is that if he's stubborn, and if I'm putting him down because I want him to change, I want him to step up to the plate, and the more that I do that, the more stubborn he becomes and doesn't listen to me. What ends up happening, instead of husband and wife being close, they're now pushed apart more slowly. What takes the place is not love, it's indifference. I don't really care anymore. Why? Because one is trying to control the other and the other is responding. Now, if I'm in this situation as a husband and my wife is nagging me to death and telling me that I'm not good enough and I should step up to the plate and I should do this and I should do that, guess what? I'm not going to comply. I'm going to do things my way. But if that's what she thinks about me, then I'm not going to change. I'm not going to step up. I'm not going to take responsibility, because everything that I do, I'm put down, and vice versa. If my wife doesn't cook, doesn't do things the way I want them done, and she doesn't change, it's going to push people apart. That then is a recipe for bitterness. Now, it's unseen, but it's in here. You know, God gave us powerful memories. We can remember dates and times and events as though they were yesterday when we want to. And we can remind others, hang on a minute, mate. I was there on such and such, and you said this and you did that. And we're quite good at reminding our spouses, well, you know what? You said this to me on such and such a day. Didn't you? Was I wrong? It drives us apart. And we get offended. And that bitterness builds up. It really does. You see, where there's selfishness, there's always going to be bitterness. Where there is bitterness, there's always pride. Is it about me? Is it about my serving others? Is it about my getting my own way? Or it's God's way? Now remember, as believers, what was God's order? Biblical order? God, man, woman, children. Under the umbrella, it works. Now here we've got God at the center of our relationship. Here is man, here is wife. Where should they go for guidance and comfort? God. Who's in control?
God is.
In theory, but in practical application, often it comes down to husband or wife being in control. And this was said to me years and years ago. Stop playing God, you are not the Holy Spirit. And the reason that that's said is so often we think we can change our partner. There's only one person who can change our partner, and it's not us. It's God. God is the only one that can change us and transform us. But you see, we can become bitter and frustrated. We can take it and say, Yes, God, I pray that you change my partner. Change him, change her to be the person you want. And I will back off. Because we pray that and we say, God, change my husband. I'm trusting you to change it. Now I'll give you 10 minutes. If you don't do something, I'm going to step in. And that's exactly what we do. We pray to God, say, change him. Nothing happens. Everything still stays the same. So what happens? Oh, I bet.
The Holy Spirit, he will change you.
Well, he only changes, Karen, if we give him the opportunity.
Yeah,
So,
give him the opportunity.
yeah, but we don't. Because we want it done straight away. So we take control. We play God. I want him to change. What do I want him to change to? I don't know, just as long as he changes. Well, God knows what he wants to do and will do it to change him. But we have to be patient. God will do the work, not us. And so often, we have a bitterness because God is not doing what we want him to do. And when God doesn't step up and do what we want when we want, because we want, there's bitterness that takes place. He's not interested. He doesn't listen to anything I say. He doesn't do what I tell him to do. Well, why should he? You don't trust him enough. Now, many people will get bitterness in their marriage relationship if they're not careful. There's feelings of resentment. There's feeling of anger and frustration that the other person is not pulling their weight, that they're not treating each other as they should. And it can be overwhelming with your responsibilities. And people can feel trapped in their roles because they don't think this is working. They struggle with society's expectations. And it can be the bitterness in parenting, the exhaustion of meeting children's needs, managing household chores, and maybe even maintaining a job. Feeling like you're losing yourself in the process of raising your family can be a trigger for bitterness. You might feel you're sacrificing your identity, your interests in your relationships to prioritize being a mother, a wife, or household duties. They can simmer below the surface until they boil up in frustration and resentment. And there are many signs that we can have. Irritability is a common sign of bitterness in individuals. You might find yourself snapping at people over something that's not a big deal. You can be short-tempered for no apparent reason. And this sends out confusing signals to those around you, particularly children. It can show itself in explosive behavior when you allow your emotions to boil over in angry outbursts, yelling at your kids. We need to be able to deal and acknowledge those things. Now, it doesn't just happen in the marriage relationships between husbands and wife. It happens with children and teenagers. Now, as teenagers, do we get bitter? You wouldn't tell me anyway, would you? If I ask you, is everything all right at home? How do you feel about mum and dad?
That's good, but Mum's still alive. But then, last night I got broken into by 3 African kids. Jumped in the bedroom with us. But I'm still here.
We know, Karen, you're still here. But as far as what do I think of my parents and their parenting abilities? How do I rate them out of 10? 10 being the best. What do I think of them? How would you rate your parents? Oh, this is too personal, Pastor. It's personal, but it's relevant. Do I think my dad and mum are the greatest thing since sliced bread? Or do I look and pick out all their faults? He's mean, he's nasty, he's cranky, he's a killjoy, he doesn't want me to have any fun, he restricts me, he won't let me do this and won't let me do that. He won't let me go where I want to go. He doesn't let me wear what I want to wear like all the other cool people do. He tells me I have to be home by a certain time, and if I'm not, I'm treated like a little kid. Do I have that bitterness within me? I can. And it's called bitterness because it affects my relationships. It affects my relationship with, first of all, with God. But it affects my relationship with my mum and dad. And it affects my relationship with anybody else. Because when I'm angry, this is what I react. Someone is mean or disrespectful. I get blamed for something that I didn't do. People don't listen or understand me. Having to do a responsibility like homework or chores. Someone gets into my personal space. Someone touches my things without asking. I get bad grades at school. Someone talks badly about my friends or family. I don't get to do or have something that I want. Someone lies to me or breaks a promise. I have to wait my turn. People yell at me. I get grounded or lose my privileges. I get treated unfairly by adults. Someone interrupts me as I'm talking and I lose at a game or activity. Now, why do I bring those up? Because they can be the basis of bitterness. And that bitterness, unless it's dealt with, will affect your relationships for the rest of your life. So bitterness and unforgiveness are strong emotions. Where did they come from? Well, I think back to the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. You know, I marvel at the amount of freedom that God gave Adam and Eve. Think about it. Everything perfect. A perfect man, a perfect woman, a perfect environment. What could possibly go wrong? What did God say? Out of everything here, it's yours. Just one thing. Just one thing. I'm going to call it my love tree. My love tree. If you love me, do not touch this tree. If you love me, obey my commandments. If you love me, obey the boundaries that I've put upon you and respect me for doing so. Very simple. You've got everything else at your fingertips. A great world to explore. Just a little boundary. If you love me, don't touch, don't do, don't break the boundaries. All that freedom. And yet what happened? Along comes a slithering, slimy little snake. And who does he go to? He goes to Eve. And what does he say to her? Oh, surely you've got it wrong. That's not what God said. Surely that's not what he meant. Go on, take it. And we're told that Eve did. And then there's Adam. She offers it to her husband. And he partakes as well. But you see, there's some decisions that have to be made. Adam was told very distinctly, don't do it, you'll die. Yet he had to make a choice. Here's his lovely, beautiful wife. And he trusts her more than he does God. And she said, here, take it. And he does. And that's why God holds man responsible for his family. Not the wife, but the man. For whatever happens in his family, God holds man responsible. He'll give an account to God. You see, Adam knew exactly what he was doing, but his wife was deceived. Doesn't mean that she's inferior. God made her from Adam's near God's heart. She was to be his completeness, the things that he lacked in. But God holds man responsible for his family and everything that happens. And every man is going to be held accountable to God for the way in which he brings up his family, good or bad. Now that should be scary to all of us. And yet, as children, as teenagers, do I resent my mum and dad this morning? Because if I resent my mum and dad, I have a spirit of rebellion within me. I have a spirit of bitterness that says, I don't want to comply. I will not comply. I will not respect them. I will not love them the way that they want to be loved. I'm going to be difficult because I resent being told what to do, when to do, and I'm going to let them know, I'm not happy. Just hang in there, Karen. Sometimes we might dislike the boundaries that our parents set. And I know I did as a teenager. Now, at 15, I was working full time. But the boundaries on me were, if I went out, I had to be home by 10 o'clock at night. I didn't have a car in those days. It was public transport. And wherever I went, I had to be home by 10 o'clock. And guess what? If I was 1 minute late past 10 p.m., I would open that door very, very softly so I didn't make a noise. And guess who's standing there going, my mum. She was always up, always there. I thought I told you 10 p.m. It's now 2 minutes past. I don't want excuses. You go to your room, and in the morning your father's going to deal with you. No excuses. I got to hide him for being 2 minutes late. Did I resent my mum and dad? You betcha. Why? Because I thought I needed to be treated as an adult. I'm working. But they put boundaries for a reason. And as a parent, I understood those then, now, but I didn't then. But the bitterness was there. And I left home early. And I never spoke to my mother for 3 years. I was that bitter. I was that full of pride. Because she said to me when I left, you'll be back with your tail between your legs within 1 week. Well, I didn't need any more goading. It was 3 years before I made peace. Why? Because of the bitterness that was in my heart. I didn't deal with it the right way. It can eat away at you. And it affects everything you do. Because if you're not right with your mum and dad, you'll not get right with anybody else. There'll be that spirit of anger, that frustration is boiling over, that needs to be dealt with before it becomes something different. It changes who you are as a person. And until you deal with it, you'll always be under its influence. God, wife and husband and family. And I've often thought that as husbands and wives, when there's disputes, when there's disagreements, what could we have done different? What should we do? We say God is the center of our marriage relationship. But how often do we go to God with our problems straight away? How often do we try and solve them and change them ourselves? As husband and wives, we say yes, we want God to have a priority in our life. But the first sign of trouble, the first sign of disputes and the rest of it, we don't speak to one another. We let each other know that we're angry or frustrated until somebody says, I'm sorry, please forgive me. Instead of saying, let's just step back from here. As husband and wife, let's take this problem. Let's take this issue that we've got and let's both take it to the Lord in prayer. And stop there and then and present it to the Lord, believing that He can solve and answer that problem without all the intensity and the bitterness that we often have. Because it comes down to a matter of trust. Is God all He says He is? Can He do all that He says He does? Do I believe that enough to say, I can't, God, but You can? I'm not going to hold grudges against my partner or anybody else. And forgiveness is a choice. It's a choice. We can choose to be either a victim or a victim all our life. And I've met people, it's always everybody else's problem. It's always everybody else's fault. This is the reason why I'm the way I am, because it's everybody else's fault. What's happened? You chose to be a victim. It's your choice. Nobody made you. You could have done things to change it, and you can. And forgiveness is a choice. It's exercising our will. When we don't want to forgive somebody, it's choosing to say, I don't want to do this, Lord, but give me the strength and the power to forgive that person. And you exercise that will. That person is no longer tied to us by chains. Those chains are broken free. I've given it to the Lord, and it's now the Lord's problem. And you know what? He can deal better with those offenses and those things that have hurt me better than I can. He can deal with my partner better than I can. He can change me. He can change my partner to be everything that He wants them to be. But I've got to allow Him to do that. I really do. And then forgiveness chooses to see the good in everybody, not the bad. It's easy to find faults. It really is. And that's what our enemy is good at. Dividing and conquering. Relationships. He doesn't need to work at them. Remember, at his disposal is the fiery darts that he puts to our minds. And if we're not prepared, we allow those darts to influence our minds and our thinking and then our responses to each other. And we do it with resentment. We do it with bitterness, with unforgiveness, and another one I'm adding, being ungrateful. Ungrateful. Are you happy with your lot in life? With everything that's happened to you? Are you happy? Can you say that? Or can you say, if only this had happened, if only I had an opportunity, if only this would happen, if this would happen, if that would have happened. And so we hold that resentment and that bitterness. But what that bitterness does, it makes us ungrateful in our lives. Ungrateful if I'm in a family to my parents because I don't appreciate what they've sacrificed to give me the things that they didn't have. And that's something we never take into consideration. They've made sacrifices to provide for us to have things better than what they had it. We don't stop and think about that. We don't stop to think, well, things could have been much, much worse. I could have lived in another part of the world and things would have been very different. But here I am complaining about my lot in life. And that's what bitterness does. It eats away from the inside like a cancer. We don't see it until it's too late. But you can see what cancer does to a body. It eats away until the body becomes fragile and then deteriorates. That's exactly what bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness do. We don't want to be those types of people. We need to learn to forgive as God has forgiven us. We don't need to be in control. God is able to do that. And He can change what we can't. He can start with us. But the question is, as a believer this morning, am I a bitter person or am I a better person in my relationship with God and with others? If there's something that's stopping it, I need to deal with it. I need to acknowledge, God, I've got a problem. I can't forgive my brother or my sister or my mum or my dad. Please give me the strength to be able to acknowledge that and say sorry and live a different life. Well, you choose to be that by your choices. But that's the challenge. It's more than just theory. We say God is love, God makes a difference. But in our own relationships, is that a fact? Do we rely on others to solve our problems rather than God? Because God said, look, I've been here all the time. I can give you what you need. All I want you to do is talk to me. Talk to me. Trust me. I know what I'm doing. I mean, He created us. Go to the manufacturer's manual and converse and find. He will change us. As the team comes.